Today we're going to talk about soybean breeding for SDS tolerance. And so today we're sitting in a SDS nursery. And I'm going to explain what we do with the genetics of SDS and how that flows into the product lineup of Pioneer. So one difference between what we do in research and what you might see in your own production field is when you see SDS, you've got one field of one variety, okay, across the whole field, and you'll have SDS spots. You might have an area that's pretty intense and an area that might be a little bit less intense, but you've got pockets of SDS. And that difference is due to the environment. So it's one variety and two different environments in that field. What we try and do is we find that SDS hole where it's really bad and then put all of our varieties in that spot. So this nursery is actually an SDS hole. It's got a lot of SDS, pretty intense SDS pressure. And so then what we do is plant lots and lots of varieties, upwards of thousands of varieties out here. And so then what we see is when we see plot to plot differences, we can be confident it's not the environment. It's not that that's a worse SDS area than this one because they're right next to each other. It's that this has no genetic tolerance to SDS and this does have genetic tolerance. And so that's what we're looking for, is the plot to plot variation. So we can see that. So from my left arm to my left arm now, that's a plot, okay? And so that variety has very little tolerance. You can see probably 80% of the foliage is burned up and gone. It's right in the middle of pod fill. There's a lot of pod abortion out there. That's going to have upwards of 50% plus yield reduction. That's not a variety that you would ever want to plant. Right next door, from my left arm to the front of the plot here, is a different variety, genetic variety. They're not related. This one's different. And what you see here is some mild SDS symptoms. There's a little bit of chlorosis out here, but not very much. And it's still very growthy. It has a lot of biomass to it. So this variety is going to be very well suited to finish out pod fill over the next 3 weeks and put on a really good crop. So this is going to have very little damage to the SDS, and this is going to have an enormous amount of damage. And so those two are real differences in SDS that we just observed here. And so the goal of this nursery and the goal of Pioneer is then to then translate that information to you as the customer. And so what we do is, over many observations of these two varieties across this location as well as other locations around the US, we basically have those averages, okay? And we're gonna, those average scores are what drives our Pioneer SDS score. So you can be confident that when you buy a variety that has an SDS tolerance score of a 6, it actually has different genetic tolerance, a higher tolerance than a variety that's scored a 5. You can be confident that over many replications, we observe differences between those two varieties. And so you can be confident that if you have an SDS issue in your fields, the biggest piece of controlling SDS is planting resistant varieties. So focusing on that SDS tolerance score is a great way to do that.